Hello, my name is Emily Hendrickson, and this is my week 5 discussion. We are going to be exploring term limits, age restrictions, and accountability for federal judges. So, instituting term limits for judges. This is going to be a little brief synopsis before we get more into it. So, some benefits of instituting term limits include promoting predictable turnover and reducing political tension. Term limits can help ease tension by lowering the stakes of each Supreme Court nomination, as precedents would know certain seats would open at regular intervals. Establishing term limits also encourages new ideologies and judicial perspectives by balancing courtrooms over time rather than allowing a court to be dominated by a single ideology for decades. However, imposing term limits can also undermine judicial independence by making judges more sensitive to public opinion near the end of their term, potentially increasing political influence over reappointment or future employment options, and threatening the perception of judicial neutrality. Similarly, imposing term limits can result in a major loss of legal wisdom as older, much more experienced judges' terms expire. Lastly, term limits for judges pose a constitutional challenge. The U.S. Constitution, Article 3, grants federal judges tenure during good behavior, which most lawmakers and judiciaries have interpreted as lifetime appointments or life tenure. Thus, instituting term limits for judges would likely have to be constitutionally amended, which is a very long process. Judicial instability would also be affected by limiting terms. Frequent turnover could lead to rapid swings in constitutional interpretation, increased uncertainty in regulatory and commercial environments, and instability in rights and policies across administrations. Without long-serving judges, doctrinal consistency may suffer. As you can see, there are some benefits and drawbacks for introducing term limits for federal judges. There are several arguments for both sides. For the supporting side, supporters argue that term limits help ensure that judges remain capable of handling the intense cognitive and ethical demands of the role. We have already discussed how term limits promote regular turnover and new judicial perspectives by predicting when justices will leave and opening the judiciary up for younger, diverse opinions. Term limits can also help maintain judicial dignity by requiring judges only serve their term and bypassing potential competency questions as they age. Lastly, term limits can avoid politicization and strategic retirements as presidencies change. Arguments against imposing term limits mainly focus on loss of experience, legal wisdom, and judicial maturity. Opposers also argue mandatory term limits border age discrimination and threaten judicial independence by allowing judges to be influenced by political and future career pressures. So now we have a balancing act between judicial independence and accountability. So first off, let's go over what these mean. Judicial independence is the ability of judges to make decisions based on the law and facts without fear of political or personal reprisal. This is considered vital for fair rulings, even unpopular ones. And then accountability is the requirement that judges be answerable for their actions and decisions to uphold the integrity of the judiciary. This is often achieved through ethical codes, disciplinary procedures, judicial review, and public transparency. The balance between judicial independence and accountability. Striking the right balance is a constant challenge. Overly strict accountability measures could compromise independence, while a lack of accountability could lead to abuses of power and a loss of public trust. Labens and Lerman remarks on the rising occurrences of worldwide democratic erosion and corruption and highlights the effectiveness of accountability mechanisms in combating it, listing judicial oversight and judicial independence as major factors after studying 3 countries' near democratic breakdowns. For the U.S., judicial oversight is the power of the judiciary to review the legality of actions by the other branches of government to ensure they comply with the Constitution. Judicial independence and accountability are both crucial for a fair legal system, with independence protecting judges from external pressure and accountability ensuring they're answerable for their actions. Reforms like term limits could shift this balance by increasing accountability and potentially reducing political influence. However, opposers argue term limits could diminish independence by introducing pressure to gain reappointment and potentially politicize the judiciary through the appointment process itself. And then we have some motivations behind judges. Although unpopular rulings occur, they are not grounds for impeachment, which is the formal removal of a judge. Public perception can call attention to questionable rulings and inquire as to a judge's competence, but there must be adequate evidence of misconduct or cognitive dysfunction presented before both houses for an impeachment. I think how this system works is that the House of Representatives votes to impeach a judge, and then the actual trial is set before the Senate. Judges are also required to justify their decisions to the public. Judges' opinions on cases can be found in the conclusion sections of the respective case. And then this is just an example. So this is the impeachment trial of Justice Samuel Chase of 1804 and 1805. Samuel Chase, who was a Federalist Supreme Court justice in a Republican-dominated judiciary from 1796 to 1805, was put on trial in 1804 for allegedly refusing to dismiss biased jurors and of excluding or limiting defense witnesses in two politically sensitive cases. He was also accused of continually promoting his political agenda from the bench. His defense argued that because of his very outspoken and reportedly obnoxious Federalist views, he was targeted for his political convictions rather than for any real crime or misdemeanor. Although he was ultimately acquitted of the charges, this shows just how much public and political backlash judges can receive for their decisions. And then these are my two references. Thank you.